Welcome to the course mastery portion of the International Studies module. Here we're going to be talking about our brand new first edition text by Scott Straus and Barry Driscoll, International Studies, Global Forces, Interactions, and Tensions. Today we're going to discuss the framework for the text, understand how it differs from your other leading IS title by Chernotsky and Hobbes, Crossing Borders, and get to understand your sales strategy. Along the way, you'll also hear directly from lead author Scott Straus. Let's begin with him describing what he sees as the difference between IR and IS and his approach to writing the book.
International studies at its core is interdisciplinary. It's a study of kind of global processes and in some ways it's a study of globalization. International relations is really this, this kind of a wing of political science that really is focused on studies of relations between states or the organizations that states create to manage relations between them. Whereas international studies is, much, much broader. It's huge in the sense that it's bringing together sociology and geography and anthropology and history and other kinds of political science. So it's a much broader sense of it. And I think the struggle that I face as an instructor was that was an incredibly exciting opportunity to be able to have this breadth, and you got all kinds of students with all kinds of interests. But at the same time, it felt a little bit amorphous, a little bit ambiguous as to what it was. I knew what it wasn't, but I didn't know what it was, beyond the fact that it was a mix of these different disciplines and a fairly open approach. So in the book, we kind of try to put a little more meat on the bones to bring some analytic coherence to what this field is. And really, the anchoring ideas are that international studies is the study of global interactions in a wide range: economic, political, social, cultural, informational exchanges across and within borders. It's the study of the tensions that those interactions produce and create. And it's the study of it sort of brings together inside out and outside in dynamics. So meaning that we're both studying kind of bottom up and from within country processes and actors and institutions, but also looking at outside in and forces that kind of more classic globalization forces, market forces, international trade, global governance, and those kinds of things. And so we're trying to bring both to bear, both this sort of sense of the micro level bottom up and also the outside in and macro level international dimension in that sense.
So let's unpack that story of Straus and Driscoll. In their text, Straus and Driscoll wanted to provide a new framework for the International Studies course that moves beyond just interdisciplinarity like Chernotsky and into the realm of critical thinking, relevancy, and most importantly, motivation. How can they connect the content directly to their students' lives and hopefully motivate them to care about events happening halfway around the world from where they are? To do this, they use the inside-out, outside-in idea that Scott Straus just described, showing things at both the micro-local level as well as the macro-international level. The authors also organize their text around the three ideas listed in the subtitle: global forces, interactions, and tensions. Essentially, the fact that there are various global forces at play, such as global markets or information technologies. And these forces lead to interactions, like who works within these markets or their governing bodies. And those interactions can lead to tensions. For example, do all parties see eye to eye on how these global markets should be organized or run? The authors believe that using this framework will help students to better understand global issues and their causes on a deeper level, and thus make them better equipped to try and come up with viable solutions.
We live in a really fascinating time. It's a time where there's a lot of change afoot, where international politics are, I think, fascinating, and I think where many students are both excited and intimidated by the world that they find around them. And I think ideally this book and this type of course can give them the tools to understand the world around them better engage it, understand why things look the way that they do, and feel that they have sort of entry into those discussions rather than sort of you read the newspaper and it's like there's growing populism and there's major migration challenges and climate change and Ebola or whatever it might be in the current day. I think for many students that can feel overwhelming, and so I think this book ideally and the tools we aim to provide, I think give students some, I think, some ability to understand and enter those discussions, I think, a little more.
The book is broken up into two sections, Foundations and Global Challenges. The Foundations section makes sure all students are on the same page with the basics they need to know in order to think critically about global problems. Section 2 digs into some of those global problems individually.
We what we try to do in the book, again, the first section is foundational, right? Really giving students the tools to be able to understand debates, understand concepts well, and be able to, I think, really, have the building blocks to understand these complex global challenges today. Um, and then as we go forward into the sort of specific issues that we address, whether that be poverty, whether that be food security, whether that be global health, climate change, civil wars and terrorism, etc., um, that we try to distill some core debates in those fields that um, draw from the contemporary world as examples, but are really focused on distilling the core debates that would, even if in 5 years or 3 years the actors are different, that they'll still have the analytic foundation to enter and understand the issues that they're looking at in the world.
Now you have two go-to titles for international studies, and they're both quite a bit different from one another. On the one side, you have Chernotsky. This text came out in its third edition and continues to be a top seller. It's strongly interdisciplinary, very focused on giving students career direction, and is a solid option for anyone just teaching the course for the first time because it covers the basics of international studies really well. It's also very appealing to those instructors that have a ton of different non-majors in their course. This is our most accessible offering. On the other side, you have the new Straus text. This book is for those that have taught IS for a while and want to move their teaching to the next level. They want to incorporate more critical thinking, or maybe they want students to start being a bit more confident in knowing what questions to ask around the global issues that matter to them. The book has a strong critical thinking focus and is very much applied in its approach. Let's talk sales strategy. And really the strategy here is simply asking the right questions. How interdisciplinary is your course? How do you approach critical thinking and practical application in your course? From a page length and price perspective, the two texts are fairly similar, but based on the questions you ask, instructors may be better suited for one over the other. Look at what they're currently using. If they're using the SNARE text, Introducing Global Issues, or the PAIN Global Issues text, you'll probably want to lead with Straus. If they're using Anderson International Studies or Kelleher Global Perspectives, you may want to lead with Chernotsky, as these are all on the lower end of the rigor spectrum. Here is Scott Straus on his experience with competitor texts.
I think one of the weaknesses in some other books is that they don't, I think, spend enough time on actually developing those core foundations. And so the first half of our book, or really, I guess the first sort of third of our book, is really trying to establish those foundations and get clear on what an intergovernmental organization is, what culture is, what a social identity is, what a state is, what a market is, and making sure that our students in international studies are not shortchanged on getting some of the core material that they would get if they were pursuing a traditional discipline.
And don't forget to bundle your IS business. The CQ Researcher Global Issues Reader is super popular with these folks, and we have a new career guide by Ubertasio specifically geared towards international students. Many students in this field know they want to work in this area, but don't know how to get started, and this book can really be a big help. Up next, you have two activities in order to complete the IS module. First, you're going to look at a table of contents comparison between IS and IR to take a deeper look at how these courses differ. And in Activity 2, you'll take a look at a spreadsheet that has a ton of different leads for your territories and try to create a plan for fall.